Hey, Mark here. I have a really cool giveaway for you. I have 5 Blu-ray copies of the first season of Landman, starring Billy Bob Thornton. And if you want a copy, just shoot me a message and be like, hey, Mark, I was listening to your episode and Billy Bob Thornton is great, and I would love to win a copy of season 1 of Landman. Also, Billy Bob Thornton's cool. I worked on a lot of sets during my day, and I worked on this movie called Jane Mansfield's Car. I was Ray Stevenson's stand-in, and Billy Bob Thornton wrote, directed, produced, and starred in the movie. And film sets are crazy, but that's probably one of the chillest film sets I've ever worked on, and Billy Bob is one of the coolest people I think I ever worked with on a film set. So whenever something new from him comes out, I watch it, and I support it because I loved working with him. So yeah, if you want a chance to win a copy, just shoot me a message and be like, hey, Mark, I want a copy of Landman Season 1. The Paramount Plus hit series Landman Season 1, starring Billy Bob Thornton, Demi Moore, and John Hamm, is now available on DVD and Blu-ray with over 85 minutes of special features. Landman Season 1. Own it now on DVD and Blu-ray. Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is my fellow 1990s action movie lover, Professor Mike Dillon. Thank you for joining me.
Hey, pew, pew, pew.
I love this series. I really, truly...
Your 90s series?
Yeah, researching Drive was just an absolute highlight, and watching, Guyver and all those films. And then now... you pitched Rapid Fire, and it gave me an excuse to go watch Laser Mission. It gave me an excuse to watch Legacy of Rage. I showed my wife Showdown in Little Tokyo. I got to tell her all about you have the biggest dick I've ever seen on a man line. And, I got to show her The Crow. So it's been fun going through his filmography again. And just, he's such a well-spoken, great guy. And it just brought back a lot of memories, but it's also just, I've really enjoyed this, like the prep for this episode, so thank you.
No, thank you. I mean your listeners should know, if they haven't intuited this already, that Mark Hoffmeyer is an awesome hang. So it's really no trouble. It's my pleasure.
Oh, appreciate it. No, just okay. So Rapid Fire. What's your when did you first watch it? Like, why was this? I kind of asked what you wanted to talk about next. I gave you a couple options, and you said Rapid Fire. Like, what do you love about this film?
I talked about this a bit at length when we talked about Drive. I was obsessed with Rapid Fire. I was a huge Brandon Lee fan. I still am, particularly around this film. My love for Mark Dacascos sprang up in the void left by the death of Brandon Lee. It's not to say I wouldn't have encountered Mark Dacascos organically on my own. Drive is fantastic after all, but we did have this sort of speculation? Is there an alternate universe in which Brandon Lee had survived and became the star of Drive, or even the star of The Matrix, or something like that? Because there is a sort of, not to say everyone's interchangeable, but this sort of biracial look that these actors all have, and the kind of action B cinema space that they occupied. Yeah, I think you could have moved some of those pieces around. But yeah, I was getting into action films early, being half Asian, half white myself. Sort of that kind of class of biracial action stars just meant a lot to me growing up. And I was also studying martial arts. And so Rapid Fire, even though, this is on VHS, so you can't go frame by frame, there are certain fight scenes in Rapid Fire that I would just rewind and press play, rewind, press play, and just watch over and over just to mimic the movements, particularly the sort of the Wing Chun choreography. Yeah. That Brandon, my understanding is that Brandon choreographed some of the fights.
Yeah, he did with Jeff Amata.
Yeah. And so it's just, it's a film that I've put a lot of mileage into, let's just say. So I hadn't rewatched it in some time, but I did to prep for this, and I have some new insights, but it was kind of remarkable, and I'm sure you must have movies that do this for you as well. It's just it's been a long time since you've seen it, but it's carved so many grooves into you that you just remember beat by beat, even the little things like those strange gestures that certain actors make, or something going on in the background. It's like I remembered everything, and it all came flooding back. And so there was a certain pleasure in encountering it again.
like Nick Mancuso biting his hand or wiping off the phone
The wiping
after
off
he
the
got it
phone,
from
yeah,
a henchman.
it's such a weird choice.
And I love that too. And you know what I think was one of the smartest things they did for Rapid Fire. So I watched Legacy of Rage and I liked it. I watched Laser Mission, where he's not really paired with anybody. It's him sort of carrying the film and a whole bunch of just odd shenanigans. And then there's Showdown Little Tokyo, where I love Dolph, but it was just kind of the two of them as like a buddy cop type film, or like a little brother, big brother type film, because Brandon Lee's character really looks up to Lundgren in that movie. But I thought the smartest thing
Yeah.
about this film is he's paired up with Powers Booth. He's paired up with Mancuso. He's paired up with Zima. He's loaded, like he's just surrounded by character actors that are doing some really good work. And I think it elevated his performance as well. I think, just being with Powers Booth, and Powers Booth just yells the whole time in this movie. He's a very grumpy man who can't hit a spare for his life. So it's how long do you think he was trying to hit that
Yeah.
spare? By the way, I have 6 questions prepped during this episode, and this is one of them for you. But how long was Mace Ryan trying to knock down that pin?
Mace Ryan, Detective Mace Ryan.
10
He's
years.
He's a great cop who doesn't go by the rules. He works out of a bowling alley and just can't seem to hit that spare. Well, until he gives up and just shoots the bowling ball, just blows it away. I mean, is everyone in the movie a complete psychopath?
Yeah.
So how many?
Oh, he keeps missing it. It makes me so happy.
Well, the question you're asking is not how long has he been trying to knock down that one remaining pin. It's how long have they been annexed to this abandoned bowling alley, right? This anti-crime vice unit or whatever they are. That seems a little iffy to me. Sort of the rogue police unit that operates in an abandoned bowling alley. That can't be real.
And it gets better every time because there's pinball machines still in there. Like it's a legit bowling alley, and it makes me really happy that that's where they must have. Do you think there's some illegal activity there, and they just shut it down, and then like, well, we have this building, so just put Powers Booth in there. Oh wait, put Detective Mace Ryan in there. Just get rid of him, dump him in there, get him out of our hair, and have him work out of there.
What's strange is that there is a moment in which he just pulls out his gun and shoots it at the remaining pin because he's a much better shot than he is a bowler. But what's funny are the reaction shots of all the other cops who none of them are, jolted awake or alarmed by the sudden gunfire. They're all looking at him and just kind of give this very game smile of like, classic Ryan. This guy finally got his pin.
Powers Booth I love him in this movie. He's always at 11 in this film. Every line is kind of yelled, and I don't know, I adore him for it. Like I love that they just plopped him with Brandon Lee, and as a father figure, nonetheless, he's basically
I've got some issues with that, but
he's a father figure.
I did want to the reason before we started recording, I asked you how comfortable you are with the cursing. I wasn't sure if you prefer to clean recording, but because I figured it's going to be difficult to discuss this film without addressing its rather variegated use of the phrase "son of a bitch." Brandon gets a good one in there too. It's like "son of a bitch."
Very creative swearing in this movie, and it has, what I think saves it and makes it something I really like is that it has a personality to it. Like I love when actually, do you want to explain the plot before we get into it, because it's an odd one.
So he's an I can't say it without laughing. He's an art student in Los Angeles who is, I guess, in the kind of parlance of our generation, kind of dealing with the trauma of having his father killed in the Tiananmen Square massacre a few years prior. And so there's that. But he accidentally witnesses a mob hit Nick Mancuso killing off a rival Chinese triad dope smuggler or something or other, fill in the blank. And so the FBI, completely in violation of his constitutional rights, compels him to come out to Chicago to testify against the mobster who he witnessed committing the murder. And mayhem ensues. Oh, he's also very proficient at martial arts. I probably should have led with that.
And ladies love him.
And ladies love him.
Okay. I
Oh,
have
hell, so, yeah, that's it. Oh, yeah. Well, and he's searching for a father figure, I guess, is the subtext of his budding romance with Mace Ryan.
there's a scene where Mace Ryan really likes this guy. You know, Mace Ryan is a big fan of Jake, but he won't tell him. And then there's a scene where he's like, "I'm gonna tell him," and Jake's like, "You don't have to say it." And Mace is like, "Thank God." Like, he's just such.
What's odd is that if I'm not mistaken, the whole film takes place over about 48 hours.
Yeah, because he's just flown out to Chicago. Immediately he gets attacked, and then a couple nights go by, and it's all over.
72 if you're being generous. And so this
Yeah.
question of what kind of father figure Mace Ryan ends up being to the main character is named Jake. And it's weird to think Jake is even looking for a father figure and then finds it within 48 hours and it's this guy. I mean, he openly calls Ryan out for being a fanatic, but then almost immediately embraces that and joins his undercover op, right? And so the whole I mean, I guess the critique would be that the whole thing is introducing this emotional element that they completely fail to commit to in any real way.
Okay, I have some questions for you. So,
Hit
you
me.
know, Brandon Lee, his dad was Bruce Lee, and so in this film, he has a famous dad who died, and they want him to sort of live with the legacy of his father, and he's pulled into action because of that. And I know that they developed this script with Brandon Lee in mind. So he made Legacy of Rage. He went to Fox, and they actively developed this. You know, he was a good friend with Dwight Little. They brought in Jeff Amata. He worked on a lot of the action scenes. This was a movie to sort of propel Brandon Lee and put him in an action film. Kind of, you know, the director said that this was a way for the studio to there's a demand for them, and he also saw that there was marketing potential and they wanted an in-house action star. So it's kind of interesting that he's playing a character whose dad the legacy of his dad looms over him, and he's pulled into the action genre. When Dwight Little was talking about this, and Brandon Lee has said this, that he wanted to be a Johnny Depp or a Matt Damon style leading actor, but he did the action films to springboard him to what he wanted. So it's like I see some parallels in his life to his character in Rapid Fire. It's completely different, but I don't know if he always had his heart in action cinema. He just used his training to get in. And then in this movie, they never explain why he's so trained, but he has that legacy of his dad. And so I think that's an interesting. They even bring up Fists of Fury in this movie. So it's almost kind of meta. Did you pick up on that, or am I reading too much into the film?
I mean, that's interesting. I do know that I've heard interviews with people who were close to Brandon, sort of pertaining to The Crow, and they said that The Crow was an important. And this is, all the more what makes it tragic. But The Crow was presumably going to be the project that finally allowed him to kind of branch out and do something that it's an action film, but it's not. The action is not rooted in martial arts. And so it is the first film that evidently Brandon felt was kind of loosening him up from underneath the thumb of his father's legacy and actually doing something that was, unique and maybe the beginning of a career that would involve people not just pointing at him and saying, "Oh, he's that famous guy's son," right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the sadder that we never got to see where that would have or what the Crow might have done for his career. But it's impossible to know at the same time. I'll add parenthetically because so much of the cult popularity and lore around the Crow springs up from the kind of added baggage of it being this tragic sort of send off for a young actor. So who knows if the Crow would have been successful if it didn't have that extra kind of morbid curiosity that people brought when they went to go see it that first time around, right? So, but to your question, yeah, I think that's an interesting read. I haven't really thought about it because it's not just that he has a kind of I don't know if you'd call him a famous father, right? But a father whose life was kind of struck down and
Mm-hmm.
under kind of dubious circumstances and things like that. But it's not just that, is that he's someone who is grappling with the legacy of his father and what it means because there's this sort of subplot that he's searching for confidential files around around his father's death, or because his father was like a CIA asset or Chinese intelligence officer or something like that, right? So there's
Yeah.
this shroud of mystery around the exact circumstances of his father's death, which you could argue is allegorically linked to the sort of all the conspiracy theories around Bruce Lee.
Yeah.
And to have, there's this moment when the lady cop gets him, somehow gets him the confidential files, because I'm sure that's something a Chicago street cop can do. But
Within 12 hours.
within 12 hours. Well, the key thing though is that he finds nothing of value in there, right? And he's genuinely kind of upset to learn. And I'm a little unclear about what he is looking for and therefore what he didn't find. But there is this sense that, oh, my father, the circumstances around my father's death were not conspiratorial. There wasn't some uh grand mystery to it. No, he just died and done, right? And so perhaps this idea of having grown up, and remember, Brandon was like what, 8 years old when his dad died.
Hmm.
So imagine sort of having this whirlwind, right, of speculation and scrutiny and conspiracy theorizing around the circumstances of your father's death, but then ultimately learning it's like, no, he was just, as larger than life as Bruce Lee was on screen, he died of something as common as just like a brain aneurysm, right?
Hmm.
So someone so heroic and indestructible on screen should die from something so, I don't want to suggest it's mundane because people suffer from these things, but something so mortal and human, right? Something, a completely unremarkable death that is only sort of, I don't know, only invites larger conspiracy theories because someone that remarkable must have had remarkable circumstances surrounding his death. It's like, no, his death was actually utterly ordinary. And to realize that maybe is the parallel to that scene when he realizes, oh, yeah, my dad, he meant the world to me, but didn't actually mean much in the grand scheme of things, and to have, kind of have to cope with that. I like that read.
Yeah, it's I just had that. I've been I was kind of watching it, and then I was watching interviews about The Crow, and people just pelt him with questions about his dad. Like it's just there's an Australian interview that really I was not a fan of because he just really the interviewer just really goes at him about his father and like, do you really think your dad died like this? That's a question the guy actually asked. And so when I started thinking about this movie, that's when it kind of came together. It sort of came together in the research. But
Yeah.
um,
And yeah, I always thought it was really obnoxious too, because when Brandon was killed on the set of The Crow, a lot of the sort of tabloid questions that were circulated was like, is the Lee family cursed?
oh yeah,
Is this the family curse? And I understand where these kind of easy, like today that would just be called clickbait, right? Just easy tabloid fodder. But to think about what the family goes through and to have what, no opportunity to go out and speak and attend public events without somebody asking you, about how do you feel about this curse, how do you feel about your family, having to go through this a second time. And that's I it's not something I've ever experienced, but I can only imagine as a difficult thing to experience a tragedy, a deeply personal tragedy like that in the most public way possible.
and he just got bummed, and he answered everything so professionally. It's kind of wild. He never got angry about it. He was such a professional when speaking. And so I
Hmm.
think during the research of this, I definitely respected him more because of just watching him deal with all these questions. And it bums me out because he was just so well spoken and such a good actor. And my first experience with Brandon Lee was The Crow. I was 12. I bought a ticket for White Fang 2, and I went in to watch The Crow with my buddy Jeremy, and actually my brother told us to go in there. So all three of us, they sold him. My brother was 14. He got a ticket for The Crow, which is kind of crazy. But we were 12. We had to get White Fang 2. Then we snuck into The Crow, and Brandon Lee just blew me away. I didn't have any of the, I was 12, so I knew that he had passed away, but I didn't know too much of the drama. I didn't know too much of anything. And that movie, between the music and like, it's a little dated now with all the goth aesthetics, but it's still a gorgeous to look at film. And as a 12-year-old watching that movie, that's like a formative moment of my cinema watching.
Yeah,
So I've
same.
I've always loved Brandon Lee. And so then I got to watch him in Showdown in Little Tokyo, but I had never researched his life like I did from this episode. And it almost made I rewatched The Crow. It made it a little sadder last night after learning more about him. Because I think I always kept it at a distance because I just didn't want to think about it. I just wanted to keep The Crow as such a, I was able to watch The Crow as a 12-year-old without too much baggage of knowing about what happened. I kind of knew, but I think just the violence and Michael Wincott of it all, and like his half sister, and you're just that's a lot for a 12-year-old. So I wasn't thinking about his death. And so now when I watch it and what I know, it's definitely changed it. And then just watching Rapid Fire as well, like, because I think this was sort of, he was just doing this for the studio, but you could tell that he still has that charisma and Like he's very good with a one-liner. Like I loved when he walks into the house and he just, hey Frank, and he kicks him in the face. Like that's like one of the funniest moments of the film. And so he has really good timing. And I think he was still a little raw because there's so many yelling scenes in this movie. But I don't know. It all basically this is my long way of saying I I really enjoyed learning about his life, and I think he's really worth like exploring because he's such an interesting guy. And I just he got kicked out of high school and he went hitchhiking for a long time, and he was friends with Chuck Norris's kids, and I know I love learning about his process, and because his dad Brandon Lee, I know I'm talking a lot here. I'm sorry. Like it's not like you're just the son of or a son or daughter of a pretty famous actor. He's the son of Bruce Lee. It's like that's a lot on your shoulders. But I think he navigated it really well. And I think he earned his spot in films. So that I don't know what you have in response to that, but I just want to let you know my history of
No, yeah,
Brandon Lee.
I enjoyed hearing that. I think I don't know for sure who can know, but I have generally developed the impression over years of just rewatching his stuff and gobbling up sort of details about his life and seeing old interview footage when someone thinks to put something up on YouTube and I haven't seen it yet, I'll always watch it. And yeah, it does reinforce this general impression I have of him, which is that in contrast to the kind of very cocky characters he always gets cast in or was cast in, he's actually a quite intelligent and very humble
Yeah.
person, as reflected in interviews that he's done. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Like I said, was obsessed with Rapid Fire. I had a very different viewing experience because I went into The Crow knowing he had passed away, and sort of following how devastated I was that I'd learned that he had died. This is before the internet and before things, so you just kind of hear things through different grapevines at the time. And I remember not believing it, thinking this must be like a hoax or something. And then, yeah, learning he died and that this was the movie that there's the last time I'm going to see him. And so I remember being very emotional during The Crow. And I think it's the thing about that movie, and I think this is why some people feel, oh, it's a curse of some kind, it can't be coincidental, is because he plays a character whose life is cut short at the on the eve of his wedding, right? And my understanding is that they were only a couple weeks from wrapping the shoot. I mean, which is why they were able to put the movie out, right? Because he passed away fairly long in the process, and they only had to do a few pickup shots to complete the film. If it had happened weeks or months earlier, then they wouldn't have had enough to go on, right? But my understanding is that they were going to wrap, and then he was set to get married to his fiance like within a week or two of that, right? So these sort of eerie parallels between Eric Draven and Brandon Lee was also something people globbed onto, and it adds this layer of tragedy and kind of soulfulness to that film that I think I keyed into immediately because I knew going in, and that was a really what contradictory experience, because on the other hand the film rocks,
Yeah, it does.
right? It's
I had the
so
cassette
good.
soundtrack.
It's one of the best soundtracks of all time.
Incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and so just it's such a rockin' cool movie, uh but then to have all that tragedy associated with it, that was hard for me because I was, maybe about the same age as you when I saw that, and that was harder to process as a teenager, to kind of know how to deal with this, and to have a film that produces so much pleasure and kind of badass enjoyment is something you can eat popcorn to while at the same time watching what felt like a eulogy in a way
Yeah.
was a strange set of emotions to process when you haven't really lived long enough to know what grief is, and to have had people in your lives pass away and things like that. That was I didn't want to make it, even then, I didn't want to make it sound like this was some kind of personal loss I'd experienced, right? I was just a fan. This
Hmm.
is not someone I knew personally, but again, when you're a teenager, you're kind of looking for ways to validate complicated emotions and make it about yourself. Yeah, I was definitely sort of, yeah, that movie's always given me the feels. The one way that's impacted my life, and we've talked about this before, I like to bring stunt people into my classroom. We talk about action design and all that sort of thing, but it's a really organic shift from talking about just celebrating stunt performers and really championing what they do. I really love doing it, but we always manage to incorporate a conversation about on-set safety. And in recent years, the go-to example has been Rust and what happened with
Yeah.
Alec Baldwin. But before that happened, you bring up questions of how something can go horribly wrong on a set. Immediately, everyone's thought of a certain age anyway. If you're a certain age, then you immediately think of what happened to Brandon Lee on The Crow. And I've interviewed Chad Stahelski about this because he's the stunt performer who filled in for all the remaining shots.
Wow.
Um, yeah, and just not to, I've never really thought about it that carefully. But if I were to subject myself to some therapy, I have wondered in the past whether or not my insistence that my students understand why blanks are still dangerous, or why you cannot mess around on a film set, whether it's Rust or The Crow, whatever. The reason I'm so passionate about that topic, and I don't have much of a sense of humor about it, is my way of dealing with how upset I got over like this idea that, you know, someone's professional negligence on a film set could, take away Brandon from us
And a lot
is
of
is
people, oh,
inexcusable to me.
sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, no.
A lot of people on the Crow got hurt. Like that was like people got their legs broken, stunt people got hurt, and all that, all the stuff about, the curse took away from the fact that people were overworked. It wasn't union. The bullet got into the barrel. They said there was too many people to blame for like too many little steps of dominoes that led to it. And it was just an overworked, tired crew, and people were doing jobs that they weren't great at. And that's kind of the same thing that happened with Rust, just overworked, tired, unprofessional, rushed sets, can kill people. And in Georgia, we had that on the bridge. A guy took his crew on a bridge, and a camera loader was killed because the
Oh,
guy was like, "Yeah,
yeah.
yeah." The guy was like, "Yeah, it's fine. There's no trains coming by," and someone died. So
Sarah something, I think.
yeah, and I worked on sets too. Like one time I was working on a set. It was outside, rainy and lightning, and someone told me to go hold down a pop up tent. Um, I was walking through a thing on dual survival, and well, I shouldn't say the name of it, but like I walked in like a gator hole, and they're like, "Don't drop the camera." When we were in the swamp, and like just the really unsafe conditions. So I stress that as well. Like I'm with you, and I
Yeah.
don't know if it's the form of therapy or me like figuring out Brandon Lee's loss, but reading about the Crow, I think that should be every crew should read that, or the way Rust happened, because it was just so many little things that led to that. So it's a bummer. I know it's not
No,
about rapid fire, but it's still a bummer in the industry to see that. And
yeah.
like the
And
this
yeah. Well, we're also celebrating a legacy
yeah.
of a specific actor who only has a tiny body of
Uh,
films to consider, right? I do think, in the industry's defense, and I spoke with, sort of prop masters who have weapons licenses, or armorers, professional weapons experts who deal with these questions on stage, on a sound stage or wherever on location. They have pointed out, I think completely accurately, that in the last 40 years, there have been precisely two, maybe three instances of a firearm going off and injuring someone on a film set. Of course, those all need to be taken seriously, but that's a pretty good track record when you think
yeah.
about the thousands of movies that come out every year across the world with some kind of weapons scene or sequence. So it's something that gets blown out of proportion in a way because Alec Baldwin is involved, and so there's this kind of celebrity aspect to it, and he's obviously kind of politically controversial because of his Trump impersonation, and so there's a segment of society that kind of relishes the idea of him kind of going through an emotional time, which is entirely inappropriate. But so the safety record of at least the American film industry when it comes to firearms on set and things like that is remarkably strong, stronger than what the proportion of coverage that the Rust incident got, I think. So it's generally, most things are accident free. Yeah, that's important to remember as well. That being said, yeah, I'm with you. I think, there should be kind of a very easily digestible and easily accessible way to explain what exactly happened on The Crow. It's actually not that complicated if the difference between a dummy round and a blank round and a live round. Same with Rust. And so for people to understand, especially younger filmmakers who are,
Mhm.
we call them our students, they need to know how this stuff works and what can go wrong and what are the misconceptions. Absolutely.
Okay, this is really random. and I know that we're talking about like on-set production stuff, but I was
I think
just
it's pronounced Brandon.
random. Sorry. Uh,
Sorry.
um,
Silly, silly, silly.
how surprised were you when the henchman pulled out the pulled off the cover of that gigantic gun in rapid fire? Have you ever gotten used to that scene in the Italian restaurant?
How surprised was I don't know. I don't know.
Because
It's an oddly gargantuan weapon for them to just pull out of the closet.
yeah, it's I think it's just like sitting there in a restaurant, and then
I,
all of a sudden that gun, and it always makes me laugh. I don't know. I just love that. I love the escalation of it because just
it doesn't add much to the mayhem going. I mean, there's nothing that in the scene that requires right heavy artillery in that way. And so I feel like maybe they're like the armor cameras like, hey, we got this. You want to use it? Hey, sure, why not? I mean, the whole movie, like there's the warehouse fight, right? This is the opening fight scene. There's this party among these college activists where apparently half the attendees are all carrying submachine guns.
yeah,
And so when I thought about this when you mentioned escalation, it's like, yeah, there's just everyone has an armory.
and Uzis. I feel all right. So in the '80s, I feel like everyone had a switchblade. I don't know why, but every movie, someone in
Interesting.
I think every character in 1980s films have a switchblade in their pocket. But in the 90s, there was just so many Uzis rolling around. And so I looked at the Internet Firearms database, which, yeah, it's an Internet Firearm for this movie, and there's just Uzis in this film. So, yeah, in that scene, it's just people are walking around, and it really escalates quick, that gun battle. But I
Yeah,
kind of love it.
if you're someone who, I don't want to sort of insist on a political stance here, but if you're someone who has concerns about gun violence and in our society, right, the mass shootings and what have you, because gun control being a massively kind of controversial topic in American politics, I love, as you know, I love action films. I don't really think filmmakers should censor themselves in accordance with some, do-gooder agenda in society. I feel that way about smoking, for instance, on screen, things like that. However, it does bother me when firearms are basically used as product placement. So as much as I love the John Wick films, it does make me a little uncomfortable whenever they introduce a weapon to him and they talk about its features and how great it is. I'm like, okay, you're just doing a gun commercial in the middle of your John Wick movie, right? We don't need to know all of the accessories that you can add to it and like what kind of grip it has. I mean, yeah. This is just pornography for gun enthusiasts, right? As opposed to just get along with the action. So, it makes me wonder whether or not if you're starting to see the Uzi kind of become more prevalent in 90s films, it makes me wonder, well, when was the Uzi manufactured? I know it's like an Israeli weapon, if I recall, but the sort of did it start hitting retail shelves in America around this time? And is there a sort of gun lobby pressure among Hollywood? Hey, feature this. We're trying to get some off the shelves, Um, that would be my immediate consideration because these are essentially product placement in some form or fashion, right?
So the micro Uzi was introduced in 1986.
Okay.
So, and it started popping up movies on the Internet Firearms database in '85. So,
All right, it's a bit early.
yeah. So as soon as it kind of came out, you should see this list: Commando, You're the Dragon, Invasion USA, Big Trouble in Little China, Legacy of Rage, Running Scared. Yeah, then it just popped up. So as soon as the micro Uzi was invented, then it started just popping up in cinema. So yeah, I mean, there has to be a marketing team who gets that out,
Yeah. I
correct?
mean, I think the only reason I know to even identify an Uzi is because I've been watching it in movies, right? Like an AK-47. Why would I have no military. I have no military background, but I've seen a bunch of Stallone movies, so I know that the AK-47 is, Rambo 3, everyone's got one. So, I mean that's what the gun industry does. It wants us to know these things because they call it it's marketing for them.
So today I learned when micro Uzi became available in college. I went to the gun range with some of my friends and roommates, and while we were there, somebody had an Uzi, and they let me shoot it, and I completely missed the target, and I blew out the wooden leg it was standing on. That's how uncontrollable the thing was. So ever since I've
Right.
watched it, I just watch movies now, and I'm like, there's no way. But I mean, I guess it's different logic for you know, cinema.
Well,
But
were you holding it in both hands, or were you holding
yeah,
it with one
yeah.
hand and and holding it sideways like
No, they would have kicked me out of there. Like when you're on a gun range, sometimes like a well-run one, you have to be by the book or you get kicked out.
right.
So when I shot it, I just wasn't. I was prepared, but I just wasn't ready for what that thing was about to bring me.
A
So
bit yeah, a bit it jitters a bit.
so when I watch movies where people are shooting double Uzis, I'm like, geez, Louise, I don't know about that. But it's a movie. It's movie logic, so it works. But you know, I just wanted to bring up those Uzis to you because I just noticed those in pretty much every movie. But if you're a filmmaker, they're kind of great. If you're an action filmmaker, I think they're kind of your dream gun because they're automatic. They probably have big clips. You just they probably look kind of cool when you're using them. And so I could see if you're making an action film, you probably want some Uzis in there, which is good for the Uzi brand, but they're just kind of easy to lug around. So I guess I understand why there were so many Uzis in 1990s cinema and 80s cinema. So I don't know why I brought that up, but I just noticed all the Uzis in this.
Yeah, that's a good reference. And of course the Gatling gun, I didn't even think to check that. But yeah, it's strange. I mean, yeah, the it's what's funny to me is that in the early scenes of the film, Brandon Jake is like some of his early kills are accompanied by these close-ups of him of this like anguished look on his face,
Yeah, yeah.
as if he's mortified that oh my God, I'm this is self-defense obviously, but I've just killed a man. I don't feel great about this. But then notice how it's completely not a big deal for him by the end of the film. He's like fully on board with just wanton murder.
Snapping necks. So in the beginning, he kills that whatever CIA or FBI guy in the house with a
The
I
barbecue
think yeah, the
tongs, yeah.
barbecue tongs, and he's mortified. And then he kills a guy in the boxes, and he's mortified. At the end, he's snapping necks like they're just a toothpick, and he could care less. So it's yeah, he went from being a kind of an
Yeah,
art student.
yeah, a reluctant fighter slash art student, under the tutelage of Richard Schiff.
Yeah,
That's Richard Schiff, right?
yeah, Richard
Yeah.
Schiff, yeah, and which is a wonderful cat. I always love when he pops up in random. It's like when Giamatti's in '90s films. I always love seeing him in his
Oh,
cameos there.
like singles.
Yeah, Truman Show and like stuff and Saving Private Ryan. But yeah, that's he becomes a legit killing machine. And I have another question for you. During the research for this, Dwight Little said that he said this movie would have made over 100 million, but they made one mistake. And he said the biggest mistake this movie made was having two antagonists because there's Serrano and Tao. Because for the beginning of the movie introduces Serrano and Tao, then Serrano becomes the main antagonist, but then he's just he gets killed by an incredible throwing star shot between prison bars by Al Leong, and then he's stabbed later. But he's dead, and then you bring in the new bad guy. So then audiences are like, "Wait, the bad guy's done. We have a new bad guy." Do you think that's what cost this movie big? Or
I think it's charming that Mr. Little believes that that is the only problem that his movie has that might have forced a demerit in the eyes of the audience. But that's valid. I mean, if you had to choose between which villain to lean on, it has to be Serrano.
yeah,
Um,
Mancuso.
because Mancuso is, I mean, that's the best performance of the film.
Mm-hmm.
That's an overcorrection if there ever was one. I think arguably it's a pretty underwritten character who he makes up for by cranking the performance to 11. It's very like, ooh, ah, bada bing.
I
And
need
you're
to
at the,
I
yeah,
need to
when he
ensure
wipes
your
the
gut.
phone, when he wipes the phone with the handkerchief before, like, that's such a great choice, right? I mean, it is, like a horrible Italian greaseball stereotype, but, I mean, it lines up just as conspicuously as the Asian stereotype. So I guess we're good. But, um, yeah, I like Zima as an actor, but Tao is yeah not as compelling a character, and the final fight with him on the train tracks is frankly not that compelling. The one with the mini boss
Yeah,
a bit earlier is I think not just the best fight scene of the film, it's the maybe the best choreographed single fight scene of Brandon Lee's career. Um,
I agree. Because there's
yeah,
scenes where they let them throw 10, 12, 15 strikes uncut during that
yeah.
fight. And
No,
they
there's some proper Wing Chun happening in that that fight scene as well. It's really nicely done. And what also sells it is so we're talking about in the laundromat,
Hmm.
the the henchman. What's his name? He's also in Lethal Weapon.
Al Young.
Al Young, the fight scene with him has the best choreography, and I think what really sells that scene is the music is not sort of like hardcore rock and roll. It's kind of these Chinese flutes.
Hmm.
It adds this element of sort of I don't know if I want to call it somber, but this sort of tone, this very calm and tranquil tone to accompany and underscore the fight, which is of course very brutal. And so that's just it. There's a lot of good filmmaking going on in that scene that I think is not in proportion with some of the rat-a-tat-tat craziness of like let's bring out a Gatling gun of of the other major action set pieces.
And they shot that in one day. And so
Amazing.
Al was working on a TV show called Raven with Craig Baxley and this famous stunt guy turned director. And he flew in for the middle of shooting. He was there for 3 days because of flying time. But he said that Brandon and Jeff Amata, who worked with Carpenter, he did the They Live fight. Jeff Amata is incredible. They they did it in one day, shot it, but then this is really funny. He's like, Brandon and Jeff are really great to work with. The producer was an asshole. At the end, he made sure I didn't get paid because he made it a point to let the Screen Actors Guild know I was working another job. And so, but it was a lot of fun doing the fight because a lot of the time you are under control by someone who knows nothing about fighting and you end up with a mess. So he loved working on this. And he said that Brandon and Jeff were great, but he didn't get paid because the producer was like, you're working on something else, which is really shifty. But one day they shot this in, and I definitely think it's the best. It has the longest takes. It's pretty gorgeous to look at, actually, as a
Yeah,
fight.
absolutely. And it's got, I mean, it has sort of a creative use of just things in the environment, which is very Jackie.
Mhm.
Uh, it's nicely done. Now, I mean, I'm kind of skipping over I don't want to leapfrog over your initial question, which is the sort of dual villain thing. I do think that you could make the argument that once they capture Serrano, that's when the movie should end.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean,
because he doesn't have to be around anymore. It's
so
done.
yeah, it's completely unclear why Mace Ryan, needs this civilian witness, which is what he is, to go undercover for him at the end with this Chinese laundry, right? Like, or for that matter, why Jake would feel any obligation to do so, especially, or even if it's legal for him to do so, right? So, like, what is it about this plan that necessitates Jake's involvement,
He doesn't have to
right?
be there. He could have.
Even Tao, the villain Tao at the end is like, who the fuck are you?
Why are you still here? Why?
I mean,
Why?
I appreciate that Jake has his shirt off for almost the entire final act of the film. I mean, you know, this sort of fixation on male stars' bodies is that, I mean, that's not that that's left us in the age of, you know, Statham and The Rock and the rest of it, but it feels like a familiar trope given that the action climate around this time included some of the most impossible muscle bodies around in your Schwarzeneggers and your Van Dammes and Stallones and all the rest. But I was surprised to learn. I guess I don't know if I'd known this before. I just maybe assumed that this is a script that was just floating around, and they just inserted Brandon Lee into it, and then thought, well, if we have Brandon Lee for it, let's just add a little bit of like token stuff about the Tiananmen Square massacre. That'll work, right? So for you to tell me that no, they structure this around Brandon Lee is interesting to me because the only reason he then has to go fight the second boss and go into the Chinese laundromat and all the rest is because they've established this sort of triad connection, which isn't necessary whatsoever. You know, the political element that begins the film about the escaping the Tiananmen Square massacre, I thought that would play a bigger role in the film, and it doesn't. It has very little bearing on Jake's, let's call it his journey, other than maybe characterizing him as someone who's neutral or doesn't stick his neck out for people, but is willing to by the end. But none of that has anything to do with the status of democracy protests going on in China.
No, none of it.
None of
No.
it.
It's a loose plot. and, and
Yeah,
he
it's
and he doesn't have to be there at the end.
yeah, it's a shame because I think if I'm being gracious, I do think there's something interesting about the call it the racial political dimensions of having how do I put this? He's an ethnically Chinese man who's become disillusioned by activism and protest, even when while that that disillusionment kind of alienates him from the kind of red hot activism you associate with college campuses. But then he eventually becomes a total vigilante, right? Someone he's fighting for the side of good, so he is our hero, but he's also doing so in a way that completely bypasses democratic rule of law, as is Ryan. So the idea of like, I think the idea of like championing the dirty Harry trope, right? Sort of rogue police actors and championing vigilantism is, I think, kind of not a great thing in society. But on top of that, you have this question of, is he redeemed from his apathy and disillusionment that characterizes him at the beginning of the film? It, is he redeemed because he decides to step off the sidelines, or has he kind of fully embraced this sort of non-judicial, extrajudicial action outside the rule of law? Which is to say, has he embraced the tactics of authoritarian states like China, which he presumably escaped from? Right. So I'm like, what are we supposed to take away from the kind of like wanton murder that Jake embraces by the end of this film in the name of doing the right thing? That's a strange dynamic.
Yeah, it's I wish I could say it more eloquently than what you just did. But yeah, there's not much character development there. I don't think he's going back to art school after this. Is he?
I don't know. I mean, he's only gone 48 hours, remember?
And he has like a
So
girlfriend now.
he could just slip back in. I mean, I that art class, or the what, he sees a dragon in the picture. Okay, so I do miss a bit of gratuitous nudity that these 90s
Yeah.
action films can be relied on to deliver. So we first meet him, he's in an art class and there's a live nude model, this attractive woman. And he's drawing her portrait and it has a dragon in it. And did you catch the shameless continuity error?
No, I didn't. What was it?
Well, so there's an over the shoulder shot of Jake, and he's drawing this portrait with the dragon in it. And then they cut to an insert shot of a close up of the drawing. So you get a better look at it. And it's two completely different drawings. They look completely different. And neither of which, I'll add, look like they could plausibly have been drawn by Brandon Lee. But yeah. So no, I don't know that he's going back to that. I mean, how fulfilled was he? Because clearly his calling is just like killing people.
Murder. Yeah, he's really good at it.
He's oddly good at it.
When he's attacked by those agents in the house, he's hiding in closets, he's kitchen fighting, he's bathroom fighting.
I do love a refrigerator door to the face.
Yes, that was great. That's
fun.
that's
Yeah,
probably,
sorry, you love a kitchen fight.
I love it. So that one almost had a touches of a kitchen fight, touches of a bathroom fight. It's a good brawl. I really liked that one a lot. That's probably my second favorite action scene of the film.
Yeah, probably me too. It has also there's a move that is also in Drive, which is it's in a bedroom and there's a maybe the gun gets knocked onto the mattress, and so the bad guy rushes to go get it, and Brandon's move is to kick the mattress from under him and causes him to fall down. I think that something similar happens in Drive.
Yeah, it's a great bed kick. He jumps off beds and Drive, kicks the beds. And I also think the two guys that he's fighting are solid in that scene. I don't have their names right now, but the two stuntmen or actors who are fighting him, I know they're brutal murderers, but they're pretty good actors in that scene. Like they both have
Yeah,
busted
agreed.
noses. They're both quite physically imposing. It's I think it's easily the like I like it more than the final. I like that they set up the Zima fight, though I don't know what it is, metal pole fighting, because he fights with a pole, like a stick in the beginning. But I think as far as like primal fight, there's something at stake because the one agent gets killed. It's good.
The one agent who's killed does wiggle like a fish a little
Yeah.
too, like maybe like half a second too long, I think.
Man, yeah, it's if someone came to
You
this
know
country,
exactly what I'm
yeah,
referring to.
it's like like was it Platoon when Defoe does that, and then but yeah, a lot of great wiggling in that scene. And it no, but I think when he stabs him and he has that scared look, and it's a good, and then the other cop shows up and gets killed. That one has stakes. That scene really does. There's you don't know how skilled he is yet, so learn that he's tough in that scene, but then he kind of becomes untouchable
Well,
after
it's
that.
also, yeah, I mean, so our first action scene is in the warehouse, right? And the first
Yeah.
great move is when he kicks someone coming down the stairs through the railings of the stairs, and he just like flings his leg through them. And then that scene culminates in this amazing motorcycle stunt through all
Yeah.
the vases, right? But this is the one in which he kind of has to think on his feet in a way that you can actually see it happening in real time, because the it makes a really good use of the geography of this cramped apartment,
Yeah, it does.
right? Because he's being flanked from two sides, and he has to kind of keep kicking one door shut to keep the other guy coming in while handling the other guy in a more active way. And so the kind of what he's caught in a trap, and he's trying to figure out what resources he has to get through it, which is a very different dynamic from what happens in the warehouse fight, right? So this is the one that I think is more rooted in character and circumstance. Like you say, the stakes are slightly different, right? Because in the other fight, like he needs to just run out of there as quickly as he can.
Yes,
And there
yes.
and he's fighting amidst all the chaos and gunfire going off everywhere, right? So it's a little bit harder to focus in on what he's doing. In this one, it's really man on man, one on one, or two on one.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's just it's very nicely choreographed. The action design and like the fridge and the use of just whatever he can grab a hold of is yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like telling a little story in of itself about sort of how Jake thinks and how he moves.
And the geography, like you said, is great. That's a really good action scene. The other one, the other one, when that big gun comes out, you're like, all right, this is silly.
Well,
And
that's yeah, that's more like the warehouse scene where it's okay, this is just Jake is sort of doing his own thing in the midst of a larger shootout. But it's not a one-on-one fight in which you see clashes of personalities, which is why that's the second best scene. But the best scene is with Andrew Leong, right?
yeah,
The
yeah.
because that's a one-on-one sort of here's my skill set against your skill set given the moment, and that's I think really rewarding for action fans, because I feel like you can have a million things blow up, but what are you going to do when you can't really fake it? And you have to have two talented performers kind of do the physicality of it, right? That's on full display in the scenes that I think we flag as being the best one.
And Al's been in so many movies I love. He's been killed in many movies I love. So he was Big Trouble in Little China, Lethal Weapon, Action Jackson, Die
Oh
Hard.
yeah, oh yeah.
Black Rain. He died. Dark Angel. That's I think one of the most underappreciated action films. It's hilarious.
I forgot he was in Die Hard. He's the one who
The
like
Candy Bar.
he gets the candy bar from the thing. Yeah.
Showdown Little Tokyo. He's killed by Brand. He's been killed by twice by Brandon Lee. But I think his best death scene is when in Last Action Hero when he's killed by an ice cream cone by
Oh my
Schwarzenegger.
God. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I'd completely forgotten that.
and then he's escaped from L.A. He actually almost makes it to the end, but he dies when the helicopter blows up.
Got it.
But yeah, he's been in some.
Is he around still?
It seems like he's retired because he hasn't had too many deaths lately. Because he had a good run there for a long time.
Absolutely, yeah. I wonder if he's based in LA.
And I think this is one of the best. You know what's great about this? And I came to Rapid Fire later in life, and I've always loved Al, but he's never been the final guy. So I know he's the mini boss in this, but this might be the most featured. I mean, Die Hard, he eats a candy bar. It's incredible. It's one of the most. That's why Die Hard is incredible, because there's so many little moments like that. But this is one of the scenes where he really is the mini boss, and I love that. It makes me very well. He gets featured in Lethal Weapon as well, but it's not a great fight scene. Even though I love the jujitsu in Lethal Weapon, that was in '87. They were using jujitsu, like Brazilian
Yeah.
jiu-jitsu. That was cool. That's probably one of my favorite final fights in a movie. But it's my long way of saying I'm just happy he got really featured in this movie.
Yeah. Well, how's his English around this time? I wonder. I mean, that could really just be the explanation for why his screen time is kind of limited, right? He usually plays henchman.
True. But he's so memorable. And there's so many memorable henchmen in this movie. Like you recognize some of the henchmen and some of the characters from, Big Trouble in Little China. I think Showdown Little Tokyo has some really memorable henchmen as well.
Yeah,
But
agreed.
I think he's just died in so many movies, but he's always such a welcome presence for someone who loved action films in the 80s and 90s. So seeing him get a huge scene in this film made me really happy. And I have one more really random question for you, and we'll talk more, but this is the last of the questions I have. Have you ever seen a montage before that features a sex scene, an assassination, and a drug bust in the same montage? Like it's like I know sometimes The Godfather, you have the christening of the baby and all the murders
Right?
to signify life and death. But this one, it's the biggest hodgepodge of scenes ever in a montage.
It would be funny if Dwight Little was going like, "No, we're going to do our Godfather montage." Right. Eat your heart out, Coppola. I do love that montage, but it did the thing that this is not really going to answer your question, but the observation I had about the montage. So I'm not questioning that they're attracted to each other and that they end up having sex, but I do question editing the montage, which, as you say, incorporates a sex scene to a music track for which the principal lyrics are "I can't find my way."
Yeah.
That's not the lyric I would go for a kind of a meandering sex scene. But um, you're right. That montage is it's an eclectic slate.
It's in my notes. I have capitalized in red guitar solo. Can't find my way. It's I've just never seen a montage like that. And but see, that's why
Well,
this movie's good though, because I think so many movies are fine. And those are the hardest movies to talk about because, like, yeah, it was good. It was, there's really nothing wrong with it. The plot makes sense, the action's good. So you can't really dig into the film itself because it doesn't have much personality. It's just good. So that's why this movie rules because Jake is an art student who becomes a murderer. Powers Booth, he's 10 years of his life hunting this guy. He's divorced. He's been trying to hit this thing for years. And then you have this montage, which I've never seen. I don't think I've seen three things. And like a montage is train. So normally you have Rocky and Drago, Rocky, Apollo, but I've never seen this type of montage. And it made me very happy because that's like, that's, a movie's going to be fun to talk about when there's this many scenes. It's not necessarily bad. I've just never seen this blend within a montage. And it made me
so yeah, credit to the film. It does have a lot going on in a single
happy.
montage, but it's never incoherent. Like we understand
Yeah.
who all the players are and what the stakes are. It does remind me of this question or this issue you brought up that it has two narratives with two different villains ultimately that maybe don't kind of exist in some kind of in harmony with each other. And so in a way, you the story they defeat the one villain, but then there's one final act with the Tao. So there's
Mm-hmm.
the Serrano narrative that kind of neatly wraps up, and then the Tao narrative that we thought, oh yeah, this guy, we still have to address him. And the montage is the pivot point, right? The montage is there to just basically say, okay, in the context of this montage, we're going to kind of unite these two attractive actors in a sex scene because it's the 90s, we need one.
Yeah.
But what we're getting enmeshed in that love scene is the sort of the conclusion, the terminus to the Serrano narrative, and then the reminder that like, oh yeah, there's this other guy in mind. And so it has a lot of narrative function. They're packing a lot of sort of they're closing some loose ends and opening up other narrative tracks and things like that. So it's doing a lot of work for a montage, right? For just narrative purposes. And I based on that metric, I think it's a pretty good montage
That's a
because
great point.
yeah, it kind of it helps us, it eases us out of one story and then kind of ramps up the stakes for the next one. So it's like, yeah, like this is our transition to the next chapter of this of Jake's journey.
It's like 1 second you have the lady kissing Brandon Lee's stomach, and then the next one, Al's throwing a throwing star into a guy's neck, and then the other one, it's just Powers Booth yelling and not being able to find anything. It's just it's such a but it makes sense. Yeah, you're killing off one guy, you're introducing something else, and then Jake stays around.
Yeah, what it may be, yeah, the really important thematic thread that the montage doesn't quite encapsulate is, like I said, it is difficult to believe how this all happens in the course of 48 hours, and it's all the more preposterous, as I alluded to earlier, to think that Jake would form enough of a bond and attachment to Ryan so that rescuing him and intervening in the laundromat uh, uh, stakeout or whatever it is, infiltration,
Yeah.
has
Yeah.
the metaphorical significance of rescuing his own dying father in Tiananmen Square, because that's the implication, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that, I mean, that's completely preposterous. But the montage does not address this sort of growing affection that these two men, this father-son dynamic that they have. It's that's where I think it's a bit lacking because that's the central love story of the
Mm-hmm.
film, not between Brandon and Kate Hodge. right? This is just a gratuitous sex scene. What it needs to be is a love scene, not a literal one, but it's kind of a montage of Jake and Ryan kind of, I don't know, sharing a beer and bonding. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
Butler and O'Shea in Den of Thieves 2, where they're having shawarma and just kind of
Oh.
having a bro moment, that's what we need out of
On
this film.
scooters. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to know whether or not this tough, grizzled Chicago detective is going to make out with this LA art student.
That you're right. That should have been they should have had scenes with them because that's probably my favorite scene of Den of Thieves too. When they're on the scooters and they're loaded up on drugs, they're on
Yeah.
scooters and they eat shawarma and they're both incredibly sweaty. Like that's the
Hmm.
probably my and then they have to swim together. Like that's probably one of my favorite moments of the movie.
Yeah. Gerard Butler's beard looks so itchy.
Yeah. He's you know what I love about him in Den of Thieves? You hear every breath and you
Yeah.
feel every bead of sweat. When he's climbing that elevator, it almost made me tired because he's just like, ugh, ugh.
He looks the way he smells, probably, which was presumably terrible, right?
I love it. So like it's one of the few movies where the main character is just allowed to be really sweaty and breathy and just kind of gross. And I love it. It makes me very happy.
I
Yeah,
do think so. Can I make a quick observation?
yeah, yeah.
So upon rewatching the film, Jake is our hero, but I did find myself finding him kind of unlikable as a person. As in, I think there's an alternate reading of him in that it's sort of again in the vernacular of our time. He's kind of a toxic jerk. Like he's
Yeah.
kind of a maladjusted, violent kid with anger management issues. I mean, he's really prone to violence for one thing, as we said. But there's
He
a
yells a
moment
lot too. He gets
he
very
yells a lot.
angry.
Well, there's a moment when so they're in Raymond J. Barry's house, and there's that moment where his foot pops up and kicks him in the face, like, "Hi," what's his name again?
Hey
Hi,
Stuart or something. I yeah,
yeah,
he said I have it highlighted in my thing here. Let me oh, hi Frank.
hi, Frank, kick him in the face. But there's a moment when Powers Booth, when Mace Ryan says, "Hey, take it easy on this poor man," and shushes him out of the room, right? So he can have a one-to-one with Raymond J. Barry. And when Jake gets up to leave, he gives the most petulant eye roll, like a disgruntled fucking teenager. He behaves like a child. Okay, 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 here's another one. When the lady cop gives him this classified intel,
he's a
and the
he's a jerk about it.
he's a jerk. Like the contents turn out to be disappointing or unsatisfactory in some way. It's not clear to me what he's reading there, but he lashes out at her, and then off screen smacks something off her coffee table like a bratty child. If I was her, I'd be like, "Hey, like knock it. My grandmother gave me that. Like there's something
Wait, how
really
old is
immature
he?
about him.
How old is he in this movie? Is he a college age?
He's well, he's an art student somewhere in LA. So let's presume early 20s.
And how old is the cop? I mean, I'm not doing age. Like, I just never thought. Like, she's a grizzled cop who's on an elite task force.
Right. Although she is sort of a junior
Yeah,
member of the team, right? So I don't know, late
yeah.
20s,
Oh,
let's
so,
say.
yeah. So that works. I mean, he's a good looking guy, but I never thought about the age difference in that scene. But yeah, he knocks stuff off her table. He's
Yeah.
really. So this is what I'm thinking. I think in the context of the movie, he's a jerk. There's not much to like about Jake, but when I've watched movies in the past and there's younger actors who have to play tough or kind of a jerk, and they're not equipped yet to handle that, they do come across as kind of an asshole because they're trying to play something, but it's not quite organic yet. So I think in this role, he's definitely. I just think he's
Yeah.
finding his foot as an actor. So
He's
he just
figuring it out.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so when he's yelling, I think that's a kind of a rookie move from an actor, like the way he gets overly annoyed because he doesn't have the range to maybe play it in a different range. But if we're just looking at the character himself, there's really not much likable about him at all. Um,
Yeah, it's funny. I have a similar, not the same observation, but a similar one about Brad Pitt's performance in Seven. I look at something like his performance in Seven, where he's playing this like cocky rookie cop. There are moments when I think, yeah, Brad Pitt is he's playing cocky.
yeah,
he's kind of laying it on a little thick, and I mean this in a backhanded way as a compliment, because then I'll skip forward and watch, I don't know, something like Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I'll see like, wow, yeah, he's really matured.
Moneyball. Yeah.
Yeah, Moneyball. So like I think if I were to think about how Brad Pitt has really kind of honed in on his craft and gotten comfortable in his own skin and just become just a really tremendous screen actor, if I would do a before and after, I like looking at Seven and saying like, yeah, there's a kind of a rawness and a I don't want to call it an immaturity because it is a fantastic performance, but it's nonetheless one that is swinging for the fences in ways that I think more seasoned and wiser actors know to play to less is more, and that's not what you get out of David Mills, because that's what you get out of Somerset in Seven, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And I mean, I don't know how much of Brandon's heart was in this. I think he just used this as a platform. I think he definitely tried. I think he put his all into it, and he knew that if this was good, this would get him something else. But I don't know if this was lighting his world on fire, because the interviews when he's talking about it, he's like, yeah, I just had an opportunity, and I just want to use my martial arts to get to this. So I think
Yeah.
he's like, I got to do my time. I know that people want to market me as the action hero. I think he was smart enough to not fight against it. Like I think he knew this was his ticket to get in the door. And so, yeah, I think, he's probably, and also he did all the action on this. So I think he was just worried about all that kind of stuff. And then the
Yeah.
performance, he just kind of comes across as a jerk. But no, the character himself, yeah, he's definitely a petulant kind of guy with a chip on his shoulder who gets really pissed at stuff. I love it.
Yeah, he's just this punchy anger management having yeah, I don't think I could get along with Jake.
No, because what is there to get along with? He's not, yeah, I don't know. He's not.
Now, do you know, speaking of like where this lands, because I'm intrigued by you saying that this is the film that is brimming with a certain amount of personality. I don't think it compares to The Crow.
No, no.
I remember Ebert at the time saying that The Crow is not only Brandon Lee's best film, it's probably a better film than anything Bruce Lee ever did.
Yeah.
Which is kind of it's a separate argument from the cultural legacy and importance of a Bruce Lee, because he's a figure beyond the kind of individual merits of the films that he did, right? But aesthetically and technically and artistically, I think there's a really strong argument to be made. But The Crow, what makes The Crow so sui generis and unique has more to do with just the presence of Brandon Lee, right? It has this grimy, grungy, lurid energy to it with the soundtrack and its look and everything. So that movie has a lot of stars to it, right, behind the camera, in addition to this having a soul in this kind of final performance or
And
a
a great
tragic
villain
performance.
too. Great
And a
villain.
great villain.
Ernie
Yeah,
Hudson, great kid. Like everyone's on the cooking in that movie.
yeah, well, I mean, the world building of The Crow and all of the kind of like set to 11 crazy character, John Polito and who else? Michael
Oh, John
Massey, and
Polito.
yeah,
Oh.
Tony Todd, Bai Ling, all these incredibly kind of swinging for the fences performances that make The Crow kind of really come alive, independent of the central character. Is I think that's the secret sauce to any successful Crow movie. And but Rapid Fire is the one that I think is this really interesting text in the context, because Legacy of Rage. Can we talk about that for a
Yeah,
second?
let's talk about Legacy of
Were
Rage.
you seeing it for the first time?
Yeah, saw it for the first time.
It's not great.
No,
Um,
not at all.
so yeah, it's basically like one half of Count of Monte Cristo, right?
Yeah,
And
it's exactly that's how I explained it to
yeah,
my wife. Yeah.
there was this funny moment, and I haven't seen it in forever, but I do remember a funny moment when one of the cops is like, "You're going to jail for a long time, kid. Here, have a banana."
Yeah.
It's like, am I misremembering that? Something like
No,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
It is a banana. Yeah. Like
It's a pretty, I think, in the scheme of things, it's a pretty insignificant movie. I mean, there's plenty of genre nonsense that was being put out that looks and sounds exactly like Legacy of Rage. So it's really only useful for our purposes in assessing whether there was enough to Brandon Lee's performance to understand what people saw in him, right? And so, do you watch Legacy of Rage and think like, yeah, I can see, independent of who his dad is, and which is difficult to separate yourself from, but could people see potential in him and want to work with him and see that he was marketable? And I think for the most part, yeah, I think so. Um,
it's like a short film when you want to put out a horror movie. Like a lot of people put
yeah,
out a
like a
short,
spec.
just yeah, it's just to show that you can do it. So I think yeah, that's kind of that's what this movie seems like to
Yeah.
me.
Wait, does Showdown come before or after Laser Mission?
After. Wait, let
Okay,
me
so
look. Let me look. Um, I want to say
I think it's Laser Mission then Showdown.
yeah, Laser Mission is 89, which that movie is the politics of that movie are very I don't even want to explore that. But
But
that's a
it's like a Cuban Soviet
yeah,
space or something, right?
they end up
He's an
in
American
Namibia.
CIA.
Yeah, he's something. And then
Yeah, I'm afraid I don't really remember
he shows
other
up.
than Ernest Borgnine being in it.
Yeah, I think Ernest Borgnine's Cuban in the movie. And then he meets this lady, this blonde, who's supposed to be his daughter, but she's actually an agent placed with him. And they have a sex scene, of course. And then he's just murdering people. And then there's two random soldiers that come along that are comic relief. And he's just very angry and pithy in it, is what the movie is.
It's
But it's
he his
fun.
very yeah his brief and short-lived career is actually I think in some ways easy to chart out because okay, so Legacy of Rage is this low-budget Hong Kong film, obviously being Bruce Lee's son played a large part in kind of getting his foot in the door. Bolo Leung is in it probably as a favor,
Yeah.
as a family favor, you know,
And he
as a
gets
family
beat up
friend.
fast too.
Yeah, well, it's just a quick cameo, right?
Yeah.
He's doing the Lee family a favor, and so the question becomes, you know, not whether Legacy of Rage is a good movie. It's did it was it enough of a showcase for Brandon Lee and his charisma and his abilities for people to think, yeah, well, we can probably invest a little bit. And so I can understand how Legacy of Rage got him Laser Mission, which is
Mm-hmm.
also not a great film. But then, okay, well, was Laser Mission good enough for him to get cast as the sort of third build sidekick character in a slightly larger budget film called Showdown to Little Tokyo? Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
then was that enough to get him rapid fire? Yeah, I can see the progression there. And then, of course, The Crow is this sort of really unusual, different type of project that I don't know how involved he was in the development of that. But yeah, you can see the progression there. And then, of course, if The Crow had become the hit that it eventually was, and who knows where his career would have gone from there. But do you know about Die Hard 3?
I don't know about Die Hard 3. Was he supposed to be in that?
So I'm a little fuzzy on the details, but apparently there's an early version of With a Vengeance in which John McClane doesn't go out into Harlem and interacts with L. Jackson. He goes to Chinatown, and the Zeus character, the Samuel L. Jackson character, is entirely Brandon Lee.
Whoa.
Yeah. So there's a scene in the police station where there's like a second bomb, the one that they kind of are dissecting in the office, you know, and it's there to establish the stakes of how violent and dangerous these devices are. But he's John McClane. So Zeus doesn't want anything to do with this. He's like, this is white people problems. He's trying to walk away, and McClane says, "Hey, where was that bomb found?" And they go, "Oh, in Chinatown." But then he goes to Zeus and says, "Yeah, they found that bomb in Harlem. So you're involved in this whether you like it or not. You have to work with me." And so apparently that Chinatown reference is sort of an inside joke because it was meant to be Brandon Lee. Yeah, yeah. So what I don't really know about is whether or not he turned down the role in Die Hard with a Vengeance in order to do The Crow, or if they rewrote the script and said, "Oh, yeah, we were considering it, but we decided that the black white dynamic is much more fun. So we've written the Chinese character out. Sorry, Brandon, you're no longer under consideration." And he was like, "Okay, that's fine. I have this other project called The Crow anyway." So I'm a little fuzzy on that timeline, but I do know that that's true that he was under consideration for that role because it was originally written as a kid from Chinatown.
So what I know is in 92 he was doing press for Rapid Fire and he was like what's next? And this is 92 and he said The Crow. And the interviewer said who else is in it? He's like no one, just me so far. So he was involved in that as early as 92. So I think I don't know anything about but I know he was working on The Crow in 92.
Okay.
Um, and so I never heard about Die Hard 3. That'd have been a really interesting role. But I do.
Did
Oh, sorry. Go for it.
but did you know that The Crow was originally being developed as a Michael Jackson vehicle?
Wow.
As like a sort of a dark musical.
I mean, I'd watch that.
James O'Barr was apparently like very dead against it, but you know what can you do once the
Yeah.
script is owned by the studio? And so I don't know. This is just speculation, so I have no idea if this is true. But this would be around the time that some kind of bad rumors started circulating around Michael Jackson and Macaulay Culkin and all the rest of it. And so I'm not sure whether that sort of coincidental information may have been the thing that kind of knocked the development of Michael Jackson's The Crow. Um,
Hmm.
and it would have been sort of a post-thriller, kind of a dark dance musical. So there, but yeah, there would have there. It's sort of like for a long time, there's this rumored project of like Beetlejuice in Hawaii. Sort of like, yeah, do a dance musical version of The Crow. I know that was in development, and I just don't know whether or not the sort of bad press around Michael Jackson is the reason why it went into turnaround and Brandon Lee got a hold of it. But that's a thing. Yeah,
I'd watch that. And also, before we get out of here, I want to talk about Showdown in Little Tokyo real quick
sure.
because I think that's when his line delivery got better. There's some lines in this movie when he's talking to Dolph. Like, it's such a weird thing. Dolph is this guy who's very he grew up in Japan, so he knows all about the culture. But then, Brandon Lee is playing a half Japanese, half I guess American white character, and like it's an interesting dynamic. But there's some funny lines, like my dad's a dentist. He's like, I know about malls. Like he's very ignorant towards like Japanese culture, but that line delivery was very funny. Like
Yeah.
he had some solid line delivery in that movie. And also I think Dolph had some good movies that were kind of like he's a better performer than people think. I like him in this movie, but it's one of the most absurd vehicles I've ever seen for someone. He flips a big car. He has like the biggest penis known to man. He kills everybody. But I don't know. I think if you see Showdown Little Tokyo and you've seen his line delivery in that, I think that gets him rapid fire because you
Yeah.
see that he can handle some dialogue. But there's a couple little lines in that movie that just put a big smile on my face from Lee. And I also like the way that they're
Agree. Yeah.
introduced. Like it's an interesting way to introduce their characters when they both get involved in the same thing and they're both cops. So I kind of like that dynamic with them as well.
Agree. Yeah, it's because you have Dolph Lundgren as the straight man that Brandon Lee's dynamic becomes the sort of wisecracking sidekick, right? And
Yeah.
so I mean that's a really specific kind of lane that you have to perform in.
Mm-hmm.
I do think if you're viewing Brandon Lee as an action star and you know that he's obviously a martial artist in real life, being Bruce Lee's son. I mean, he has the ultimate kind of ancestry in that regard. If you view him that way, then the amount of sort of high kicks and action he gets in Showdown in Little Tokyo is a little disappointing because it's not really about him. So it's not the best showcase. But you're right in terms of, okay, can he deliver a line? Can he flash a smile? Laser Mission has
Oof.
this, but arguably in sort of a less graceful way. I mean, it's Laser Mission is a bit of a mess and it's very schlocky, right?
Very schlocky.
Yeah.
It has a
Showdown, yeah.
personality. And I kind of like the twist that lady's actually pretty good with guns, but it's
Yeah. Well, so the thing, the Laser Mission is like too earnest almost in its
whoa.
wisecracks and its gun violence and its sort of, faux James Bond kind of
Yeah.
charmer, get the girl, flash a smile kind of thing. It's a little too much in that direction. Whereas in Showdown, it's basically a similar enough character, but it's subsumed by the sort of larger kind of mammoth figure of Dolph Lundgren, and so you're able to get those qualities out of Brandon in shorter bursts that allows it to pop a little bit more, as opposed to just being kind of blanketed by it, which is what you get in Laser Mission. Um,
Good point. Yeah.
yeah, I think also just the kind of there's a self-serious tone to parts of Showdown that the sort of yakuza violence of like knives and people being stabbed, and of course Kerry Tagawa is just this fantastic yakuza villain in everything he's
Yeah.
in, right? He's got that anger to his face, that intensity to him that I think also takes it out of the realm of goofy that I think Laser Mission is a little bit too anchored to.
Yeah. No, yeah. No, I mean, he decapitates that lady during that scene in Showdown. Like, it's a very violent,
Yeah.
hyper weird movie. And then Laser Mission doesn't have that. Oh, wait, I have a question though. Like, so let's go back. The final fight of Rapid Fire with Zima and Brandon Lee. That was pretty rare, I think, for a '92 action film because you're just, like you have two Asian men at the final fight of an American action film, like good
Hmm.
and bad. I mean, I don't think that happened again until maybe Mortal Kombat in '95. I don't know if that's I just
Hmm.
think that's pretty interesting. And also, I worked with Zima on Million Dollar Arm. I was one of the additional first team PAs on that, and I dealt with all the actors, got them through hair, makeup, and wardrobe. And he told me I was a gentleman, so I'm always gonna like that guy. So anytime he's on screen, I'm like that guy
What?
is a fan
Oh,
of mine.
that's a lovely story. Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
yeah,
always, yeah, I love seeing him pop up and stuff.
yeah, he looked at me and was like, "You're a gentleman." I'm like, "That's awesome. Thank you."
Thank you,
Um,
Tima.
yeah, no,
Um,
appreciate that. I also got to hang out with Bill Paxton on that movie, and that was like probably one of the highlights of
oh,
my career.
R.I.P.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we became not like far from buds. Like we never spoke after it, but we saw each other on set every day, and we're like, "Hey, man!" So that was like probably one of my best memories of working in film was hanging out with Bill Paxton on
that's
that
great.
set. But going back to that final
Um,
fight, I thought that was a pretty interesting. Like you're kind of used to maybe the star battling like an Asian villain. You didn't really I knew Bruce Lee, but he hadn't done that yet. So I thought it was an interesting final fight with Al and then Zima. Like that's something pretty original for a Hollywood action film in '92.
that's a great point. I'd have to give it some thought to see are there really no other prominent examples? You may absolutely be right. Although I have to say that that's kind of dampened by how I find the final pole fight on the train tracks kind of
It's bad.
lackluster.
Yeah.
It's not great. But then it does give us the great line delivery though afterwards when he rescues Ryan and everyone's been vanquished and Ryan says, what about Tao? And Jake Brandon says he's one with his ancestors, which is like, wow, all right.
I like how he dies standing up though. That's an interesting visual with the train going by. But other than that, like I don't like you watch a movie like Taken 2 or like Quantum of Solace when the villains are just really seemingly overmatched. But they put up a great fight. That always loses me. And I can name them off the top of my head. So I definitely got that vibe from that fight. But I guess I had the final line and then it had the good final kill. But I just thought that was kind of interesting because, growing up, I just didn't see too much of that. And so when you brought up Showdown in Little Tokyo and, I forget his name, the main villain from Showdown in Little Tokyo.
I
Well,
mean, Kerry
yeah,
Tagawa
yeah,
is
Tagawa.
the
When
actor's name. Yeah,
and then he fought, oh gosh, Liu
he's also
Kang.
he's Shang Tsung in
Yeah, and like when he like I was like this is one of the greatest fights I've ever seen in my life. It just felt refreshing and cool. So then when you brought him up, that brought me back to this movie, and then I just kind of thought about that final fight. So I mean, it's not like I guess revolutionary or anything, but it was a unique fight for 1992, and you got to think that
yeah.
Brandon probably had some input on that. So I thought that was pretty neat.
That is neat. Although I guess the counter argument would be, if you're gonna have Asians in your movie, let's make them fight because
Yeah, that's true.
they're obviously proficient in martial arts. I mean, it
Oh
does.
yeah.
I guess there is a political dynamic that is it's still persistent in conversations about immigrants, which is to divide them into quote unquote good ones versus bad ones.
Mm.
So, I mean, and that kind of reductive thinking is still animates our politics today. And so, the idea that Jake's goodness and decency and heroism is measured by his willingness to stand up and fight against the obvious criminals within his own community, ethnic community. I mean, there's something reactionary, I think, about that. It's nothing to make that big a deal of because it's the kind of thing that always pops up in films like this. But having that Tiananmen Square backstory
Yeah.
does add this weird dimension to it all because it puts Jake's decisions and moral choices within a larger framework of whether he is actually committed to the basic principles of democracy and democratic society, right? And so to have
Yeah.
these sort of immigrant identities pitted against each other, battling for dominance over who's right and who's rightful and righteous is kind of there's an undercurrent there that I think is maybe worth exploring if I were to give some time to it.
Got it. That was just something that popped into my head, so I just want to bring it up and
No, that's a
see what
great
it's about.
observation. I'm gonna
Yeah.
be thinking about it
That's why I
because
like this movie. I had some like I talk about some films on the show and I always love talking about them, but I sometimes I just don't have anything to say. But on this one I like the questions came like just rapid fire to me. So I think there's a lot of like meat on this movie to chat about. And so that's why I'm glad we picked it. This was a good time.
yeah, it's loads of fun, if nothing else, right? So there's certain things we can if we just wanted to geek out over the action design of this fight or that fight or this kick or that punch, like there's plenty of like you said, there's meat on the bones, right? It's a well constructed enough action film, but then it's also, I mean, it's interesting in itself and its politics, and it's also interesting in terms of where it lands in the filmography of someone who only has just a handful of films, but nonetheless a pretty solid legacy worth discussing in the pop culture, right? So I think, yeah, Rapid Fire, there's so many different ways to approach it. Like there's a lot of we got a lot of conversation out of this. It's not just some rinky dink forgotten movie.
This is a I love this episode. This is fun. And
Yay.
yeah, we got a lot out of this movie. We
Yeah,
really did.
there's a lot going on. There's a lot going wrong as well. But
like I think that the Rotten Tomatoes score is a little low for it, but I think the IMDb score is pretty close. It's a 6.3.
What's the Rotten Tomatoes?
Well, 45. I think, and then 3.2 on Letterboxd. I think the 6.3 feels pretty good on IMDb because there's faults to it. It's pretty quick, but if you can have fun with it though. Like this is not something you can be hyper cynical towards.
Yeah, I think when my cynicism creeps in is when I struggle to make sense of why a particular film even exists.
And
apart from some idiot somewhere thought this was a good idea, but like Rapid Fire, I enjoyed having this conversation with you in particular alongside Legacy and Laser Mission and The Crow, because it's a film that makes a lot of sense when you put it in the context, not just of sort of like early 90s action cinema, which we did. And I think I'm left with more questions about sort of thinking about, you're right, the sort of Asian climax between Asian fighters. How unique was that in the early 90s? When did the Uzis start to really come up? Like those are really interesting sort of macro context questions for like Rapid Fire being a window into larger trends happening in action cinema at the time, but then also like looking at Rapid Fire as a film that lends itself to new reading strategies when you think about it in the context of Brandon Lee's evolving career, which is of course tragically cut short. So yeah, I think this has been fantastic. Not to because we're not just like reading the text, we're also looking at context and sort of framing it a certain way. So that's always a delight.
I'm very happy with this discussion. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Professor Mike Dillon.
Always.
This is awesome. So
see you at the next one.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about it off air, but we'll go through the list, but I'm down. You'll hear us soon. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, Professor Mike Dillon, this is Movie Films and Flicks. We'll see you next week.